Winning Blueprint presents.
In the Lab room. Arizona Cardinals.
So we find ourselves talking Arizona Cardinals football. Shh! Don't tell nobody. But I have a little thing for the Arizona Cardinals. Shh! Shh! Between me and you, I have a little thing for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't like them. I'm a Redskins fan. But I do keep an eye on the Cardinals from afar. I check on what they're doing a little bit more closely than one should if you're not a fan. I have my reasons, okay? They're dumb, and they may be a little childish. However, they're my reasons, okay? Back off. Back off, all right? I used to play with them on Madden a long time ago. They've won me money in the past, and so they kind of endeared themselves to my heart. Also, my favorite color is red. And so I like their stadium. I like their field. Don't ask me why. I don't know. Stop asking. Just know that there's a little something extra there about the Arizona Cardinals for me. But make no mistake about it, they're not my favorite team. So what happens in Arizona stays in Arizona. It's of no concern to me. And so when they struggle and go on a 9-game losing streak, I treat them just like every other team in the National Football League, not named the Washington Redskins. I absolutely went to town on this team this season. And it was actually kind of fun because you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. That's been my motto all season long. You know that that's the truth. You can't run away from the fact, you can't hide from the fact that if you don't have a quarterback in this league, you don't stand a chance. And the Arizona Cardinals don't have a quarterback. 3 subpar quarterbacks don't equal a solid quarterback. That's like saying 3 hot dogs equal a hamburger. No, it doesn't equal a hamburger. If you want a hamburger, you go and get a hamburger. You don't go get 3 hot dogs because you want a hamburger. It's the same premise in Arizona. You want a good quarterback, but you go get 3 less than stellar quarterbacks, and you say, hey, one of you is bound to pan out, right? Wrong. The Arizona Cardinals, to me, are an enigma. They have a cheap owner. The Bidwells are known to be very frugal with their money. They don't like to spend it. They don't like to go out and get free agents. And so them spending money on Kevin Kolb seems to be a bit of a mystery. No one really knew what Kevin Kolb was, except for maybe Andy Reid, and that's probably why he was so willing to part ways with Kevin Kolb. But nonetheless, you give up some money for Kevin Kolb. He turns out to be injury prone and not very good when he is playing. And so you have a decision to make. Do you cut ties, cut your losses, and say, hey, we're not paying you this big bonus to be a subpar quarterback? And ultimately, that probably cost Ken Whisenhunt his job. And I like Ken Whisenhunt. I think he's a very good NFL coach. I think he will be a coach again. Maybe not this season, but he'll be a head coach again in the National Football League. Mark my words, he's a good coach. And I thought that he was fired prematurely. But look, you lose 9 games in a row after starting the season 4-0, heads are going to roll. It's really simple. You can't lose 9 in a row after starting 4-0 when you basically have the same pieces in place. Yeah, the quarterback change here and there. Yeah, running back change here and there. But it doesn't matter. For the most part, the nucleus of your 4-0 start was still intact and you weren't able to get it done. But that 4-0 start for the Cardinals in the 2012 season was a mirage. If you weren't looking closely, you were fooled. It was a mirage. It was that car that was coming up from the rear really closely. You know how that message in your mirror on the side of your car says objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear. That was the Arizona Cardinals and them becoming a bad team. The Cardinals were here, and them being a bad team was right here, and it was vastly approaching. And as they got closer and closer, they looked in that side mirror and it said, hey, us becoming a bad team is really getting closer. I think it's a lot further away than what it really is, because I'm looking out that mirror, and it doesn't seem like it's that close. But it was really close. And it caught up with them, and it engulfed the Arizona Cardinals in 2012. They were a bad team. And defensively, the problem I have with them is defensively, they weren't that bad. They forced turnovers. They really kept their team in the ball game. They gave themselves a chance. They just could not get it going offensively. They were anemic on offense, were the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals finished second to last. They were ranked 31st in scoring offense in the National Football League. You know what ranked 31st equates to in the National Football League? 15.6 points per game offensively. That's a quarter for some teams in the National Football League. 2 touchdowns and a field goal, essentially. And really, if you want to round down to 14, because 15 is closer to 14 than it is 17, that's 2 touchdowns. The Cardinals score 2 touchdowns a game. That's it. You can't win many games in the National Football League like that. It just doesn't work that way. You have to score points. And with those quarterbacks, Cobb, Skelton, Lindley, you can't win in this league with that below average, that subpar quarterbacking in this league. You can't win that way. And these guys, week after week, showed how inept they were, turning the football over, not getting the football to Larry Fitzgerald, and not being competent quarterbacks in the National Football League. And that was really the undoing of the 2012 Arizona Cardinals. It really was, because you look at this team as a whole, especially defensively, they were a solid bunch. They gave up a shade over 22 points per game, but they were only -1 in the turnover differential, which lets you know that they weren't that far off. You know, all of these teams that we've talked about thus far have been -10, -14, -17, -22 in the turnover differential. They were horrendous. They were abysmal at taking care of the football and getting them back. See, the Cardinals were terrible at taking care of the football. They had 8 turnovers in one game this season against the Seattle Seahawks. 8 turnovers gets you a 58-0 shellacking. So they can turn it over with the best of them, but they also got turnovers. They picked Matt Ryan off 5 times. This is a team that really forced turnovers. They just couldn't do anything with them. They couldn't score points. If the defense decided to turn you over, they needed to score on that turnover, because if they turned the football over to the offense, chances are you're getting a field goal or nothing out of that turnover. And some of these turnovers were in prime scoring position, and this offense just botched it. Botched the whole situation, the field position, everything. They'd either go backwards or they'd just be stagnant and have to punt. And so you couldn't help but feel sorry for this Arizona Cardinals defense, because they did their part. They were good enough for this team to be threatening to make the postseason. This defense was good enough to have this team win 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 games. The offense, however, was exactly what this record states, 5-11. This offense was a 5-11 offense. And really, if not for the hot start, this offense was probably more like a 2-14, 3-13 offense. But luckily enough for them, they started off 4-0, and so they were able to stay out of the basement in terms of worst teams in the league. But at one point, I had the Arizona Cardinals as the worst team in the league. I mean, they couldn't get out of their own way at that mid portion of the season, toward the latter half of the season. They couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't score points. They were allergic to scoring points at one point. And so, man, I tell you, these Cardinals, they're not that far off. I like some of the pieces on this roster. This offensive line needs to be revamped from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right. They need new pieces all over this offensive line. If their draft just consisted of all offensive linemen and one quarterback, I'd be fine with it. because their offensive line stinks. No other way to say it. Now, in free agency, they need to address that. In the draft, they need to address that. They need a quarterback. I think that's definitely goal number one in the offseason. Get a quarterback. Of course, they need a new head coach. They already addressed their GM position. They promoted from within. Steve Keim was promoted to GM, so they have their GM now after firing Ken Wisenhunt and Rod Graves. So they've already solved their GM woes. They promoted from within with Steve Keim. Now they need to find a head coach. And I'm pretty sure they're looking right now. Guys that are probably leaders in the clubhouse in Arizona are Jay Gruden. They're also talking to Ray Horton, their defensive coordinator. I think that's a fabulous idea. I think that's a great move if they were to hire him. What better person to hire than someone with intimate knowledge of your franchise and the inner workings of it and knows what it's going to take for this team to be better. Now, he's a defensive guy, and they need help offensively, so maybe that's not the direction you want to go in, but he can always hire someone that's a very good offensive mind to take care of that side of the football, and he can just continue to focus in on the defense. And again, as a head coach, it's your job to have your hand in every single pot that there is on this team. So special teams, offense, and defense, the head coach needs to have something to do with all of them. But again, his specialty is defense. He needs to continue to coach up this defense, and he can always find someone to come in and get this offense on track. But you need a quarterback first and foremost. You need an offensive line to help that quarterback. And so they can't draft the quarterback and then stick him behind this offensive line. Then that quarterback will become damaged goods, much like a David Carr, much like a Patrick Ramsey, much like some of these quarterbacks that have been stuck in bad situations behind bad offensive lines and been really tarnished forever. Your Tim Couches of the world. Guys who really never got a shot because their offensive line was horrendous. You get a guy beat up immediately as they come into the league, they become shell-shocked, and they're not the same quarterback. So if they're going to draft a quarterback, they need to get an offensive line immediately. Draft and free agency need to be ways to address this problem, because after Levi Brown went down for the season in the preseason with that torn bicep, that was it for this offensive line. They were in shambles all season long. They were playing musical chairs trying to figure out what guy's going to go here, what guy's going to go there. They started shuffling guys around. It was a mess. And you can see it was going to be a mess in the preseason when they played the Tennessee Titans, and I want to believe it was the third or second preseason game. And they stuck a rookie out there at left tackle, and they made Cameron Wembley look like an all-world, all-pro defensive end, and he was just going to work. They got rid of that tackle the next day, and he was a rookie. I felt bad for him because he didn't sign up to be thrust into the fire and give up 4 sacks and be cut the next day, but that's the life of the NFL, and so they need help. Both tackles, maybe they could get away with, I believe last year they drafted a tackle out of Boise State. He might be okay at right tackle. They need a left tackle. I think they're okay at center. They need some tackles. They need some help on the offensive line. They need a quarterback, and you can't get one without the other. One without the other makes absolutely no sense, because your quarterback can be well protected and still not be good. And I think that's what they have in Arizona right now is 3 bad quarterbacks. And so they need a new quarterback, and they need a new offensive line. So I am jumping around a bit because I want to go back to the head coaching search for the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's going to be a very important decision for them because they had a culture of losing, and I thought that Ken Wisenhunt did a fabulous job of coming in and changing that culture. And I felt like they really didn't give him an opportunity to right this ship. It's not like he had a string of terrible seasons where they've been really bad for the last 4 seasons. I think that they weren't as good as they could have been 2 seasons ago. This year, the offensive line, the quarterback situation was a mess. They lost Beanie Wells early in the season. Ryan Williams went down again. And they really didn't have any running backs. And even if they did, this offensive line was so bad that their running game was going to be non-existent anyhow. So I just felt like he got a raw deal here. This guy single-handedly turned your franchise around, and he was the first coach to take your franchise to the Super Bowl, and he didn't get a chance to turn this thing around. I just didn't agree with that. He changed the culture in Arizona. He made it okay to go to Arizona as a free agent. He made it okay to win in Arizona. And all of a sudden, he's just cast away as if he'd done nothing but come in Arizona and just lose. And so this next coach that comes in needs to continue to foster that environment of winning in Arizona. Because I thought Ken Whisenhunt, even though this season went to hell in a handbasket and rather quickly, I thought that he did a great job of having this team prepared to play each and every week. And yeah, they were a bad team. And when you're bad and you know you're bad, you're going to stink. And that's what the Cardinals were this season. After about the 5th or 6th loss in a row, they realized we're a bad team. And it starts to affect you mentally. One mistake happens and it snowballs and it turns into another one, which turns into another one, which turns into another one. And all of a sudden, you have 8 turnovers in one game. That's what happens to bad teams. They realize they're bad, and then they start saying, here we go again. And yeah, here you go again. Because mentally, you've told yourself, here we go again. And so I thought that Ken Whisenhunt should have gotten a chance to clean his mess up. He didn't get a chance. And so this next coach needs to come in and get the Cardinals back to winning. Now, you can't do that without an offensive line, without a running game, without a quarterback. And so this offense needs to be revamped. You start with Larry Fitzgerald and you work your way in. Because Larry Fitzgerald is out wide. I think they are set at receiver in terms of building a nucleus out wide. I like what Roberts is doing. I think that Floyd over time will be better. I was really disappointed with his rookie campaign. But I think over time, as he gets acclimated to the NFL, the speed of the game, he'll be fine. And now, Larry Fitzgerald, he's an animal. We know what he is. I don't even have to talk about Larry Fitzgerald. So right there, you have 3 receivers I feel like you can build around and continue to grow. You could add another receiver or 2. I love Rob Hausler. I think he's a very athletic tight end that, if given a chance with the right quarterback in the right system, he could flourish. You get a coordinator and a coach that understands the value of a tight end, he could be a very dangerous threat for this Arizona Cardinals football team. But after that, offensively, everything else is a question mark. Even your backfield, where you think there's talent in Beanie Wells and Ryan Williams, they can't stay healthy. I love LaRod Stevens-Howling, but he's a third down back. He's a change of pace back. He's the guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, that can get you 8 yards on a draw on 3rd and 3 when the defense isn't expecting it. I love LaRod Stevens-Howling and what he brings to this team in terms of value, but he's not an every down back. And Ryan Williams and Beanie Wells consistently stay hurt. So you don't know what you have in the backfield. Your offensive line is in shambles. You need a new one. Your quarterback position is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the National Football League. And so your offense needs to be revamped. Defensively, I like what you're doing defensively. I think that Darnell Dockett might not be back. I don't know what happened in Arizona in such a short span. He went from being one of the faces of that franchise to a guy that feels like he's been exiled from this Cardinals football team. And so don't know if he'll be back. I don't know what the situation is there, but he's been someone that's been a force for them up front. I absolutely am in love with Darrell Washington at the linebacker position. He was a hidden gem at TCU, and I think he's come in and he's playing some really good football. I was drooling all over Darrell Washington watching the Cardinals this season. I think he was a standout on that defense. I like what Mr. Acho is doing on defense. I like their linebacking core, is what I'm trying to say to you. I think linebackers, they're fine. I think at cornerback, they're fine. They went and they got Gay from the Steelers. He's been playing solid. He has his moments where he's beaten and he's not where he's supposed to be defensively, but for the most part, he hangs in there. He plays a solid corner. I also like some of the, I think that at corner, they're fine. Richard Marshall's there. Gay's there. Patrick Peterson is evolving into one of the better corners in the league. Now, what he did on special teams this year, that's a different discussion. But defensively, he's rounding into a very, very good corner in this league. At the safety position, Kerry Rhodes still hanging on. I thought he might have been done after he left the Jets. He seemed to have revitalized his career in Arizona. He's a solid safety. And so there is definitely some pieces on this defense that you can grow with. But defensively, but offensively, there's a lot of work to be done. Special teams. Let's get to that really quick before we get out of here. Patrick Peterson was very disappointing on special teams this year. I thought that last year he allowed the game to come to him. This year I felt like he was pressing every kick he wanted to score a touchdown on. And you can't do that. You can't catch the football on every play thinking, I'm going to run backwards 15 yards so that I can break for a touchdown. You got to at some point realize I need to just get up the field, get what I can get, and hopefully while I'm running, I can just break it. And I thought that's what he did a great job of last year. It's just getting north and south. And whatever happens after I break it through the first wave, let it happen. And I thought he just did a great job of allowing the game to come to him instead of him trying to press the issue. This season, I thought that every time he touched it, he wanted to score a touchdown. And so if he had to run backwards 7 yards to try to score a touchdown and get around the edge and he'd end up losing 8 yards on the return, he'd do it. If he had to wait and be patient and sometimes to a fault to see what the special teams unit was doing, he'd do that and then they'd get him. And sometimes he'd field it inside the 2 or the 3 yard line and you're like, what are you doing, man? Because he had success doing that a year ago. But this season, it wasn't the same. And if he's going to return kicks and punts and whatnot, he's going to have to get back to what he did in his rookie season, which is just go, man. Just go. You're athletic. You're a freak. You're strong. I've never seen someone break as many tackles returning kicks as you do. Maybe Tamrick Vanover. You're built like a Tamrick Vanover of Kansas City back in the day when he used to return punts, where you're just bouncing off of people because your lower body is so strong. Just go, man. Don't try to be one of these smallish guys who want to outrun and kick coverage and go around and take 8 yards backwards. Do what it is that made you successful, that made you one of the best kick returners, that made you one of the best punt returners in the National Football League. Go north and south. Just go, man. Just go. And I think if he gets back to that, he can be a force because, man, did the Arizona Cardinals need a punch in the arm. They needed a shot in the arm from his special teams unit. They could have used it this season, and they just didn't get it. He did nothing on special teams, and I thought he was just being greedy. That's all it really was. He was being greedy. And if he can't do that, if he can't just go north and south, if he wants to be greedy, then they need to get him off of that and just allow him to focus on defense. And that's it for the Arizona Cardinals in a nutshell. You need a quarterback. You need an offensive line. The defense, I think, you could use pieces here and there. You could use a explosive outside linebacker that can get to the quarterback. I think that Calais Campbell is really coming into his own. He's starting to realize, hey, I'm 6'8". Why don't I start knocking the football down every chance I get? He's doing that when he's not getting to the quarterback. He's knocking the football down. I think there's a lot to build around that defense. They just need an impact player out on the edges on defense and getting to the quarterback. And on offense, you need an offensive line. You need a quarterback. You need to figure out what's going on in that backfield. And if you can't get it together, then you need to draft something there. But there are a lot of pressing issues for this Cardinals team, mainly on the offensive side. And free agency and the draft should help you alleviate some of that stress. But I tell you what, if you don't take advantage of the offseason, this team will be right back where they were in 2012, and they'll be a 5-4, maybe even a 3-win team because you're getting a new head coach. And so things are going to be different. And there might be a period where you struggle this season because there's a new head coach, and he's needing time to figure things out. And so he may not hit the ground running. And if this team isn't prepared to win football games, it could be another long season for the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll have to watch from afar and see what happens with this Cardinals group because right now they need a coach. That's first and foremost. They need a quarterback. That's probably second on your agenda. I said the first thing was the quarterback, but if you don't have a head coach, what do you have? So they need to find their coach, and they'll find him here shortly. If not in the next few days, it'll be in a week or so. They'll have their coach by the time we're doing this segment again in a week's time. And then you need to start looking at, is there a quarterback in the college ranks that fits my needs? If so, start making preparations to draft that quarterback. If not, look around in free agency. There are going to be some quarterbacks available. And hey, if all else fails, just look up the street at the San Francisco 49ers. Pick up the phone and say, hey, I noticed you're not using Alex Smith. What's it going to take for us to pull him from up under you? Maybe Alex Smith is the answer. Maybe Matt Flynn in Seattle is the answer. There are several quarterbacks that you could go calling about and see. Look, Matt Flynn has not proven himself in this league, so don't go doing the same thing you've already done with Kevin Kolb. But we know Alex Smith, if put in the right situation, can flourish. So don't be afraid to pick up that phone and make a phone call. That's all I'm saying. But that's going to do it for the Arizona Cardinals. I thank you for joining me here on this lab follow-up. Stay tuned to this program, as tomorrow we'll be talking Buffalo Bills football. They're the 8th pick in the draft, and so they'll be up next on this lab follow-up series. So I thank you for joining me in the lab room follow-up series, Arizona Cardinals. Hope to see you tomorrow when we're talking Buffalo Bills. See you then. Have a good one.
Arizona Cardinals.